Hello, I'm Abigail DeJarnett.
My name is Allison Lind.
I'm your host, Grant May.
My name is Noelle Fitchett.
And welcome
back
to the Counteract Podcast.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Counteract Podcast. I feel like it's been so long since we got to chat. I mean, we literally haven't talked since last year. I am so happy to be back. I hope that you guys had an amazing holiday season. I hope you got to spend it with loved ones and family. And ultimately, I hope that the peace of God just ruled in your hearts and that you were able to just spend time reflecting on the wonderful miracle that is Christmas and just exactly what Jesus did coming down to earth as an infant. I also hope that you had an amazing new year. I know things have been a little tense in the news cycle. Some really disturbing events have happened. I'm sure we'll cover them at some point on the show. But I just want to say, as we enter 2025, this is a season that we need the Lord now more than ever. I mean, the election showed us that the nation is ready for a shift. But guys, this is the year that we're going to be running full force, full sprint, just proclaiming the gospel and changing hearts and minds for the love of Christ. And I really believe that this is a pivotal year for the church, for America. And yeah, I just wanted to bring awareness to that. There was two potential, one for sure was a terrorist attack. The other, I don't know if they have decided yet at my time recording this, but there were some attacks. There were some people who did not get to see 2025 and some family members who are grieving right now. I want to bring awareness to that before we hop into this episode and just say, please be praying for those families, for just all the communities that are affected by those problems. And just remember that like the government rests on the Lord's shoulders and that he is the Prince of Peace. He rules over all principalities and powers and all darkness. He has defeated death, and we can let that victory and that peace rule in our hearts through hard seasons. And I really hope that that is something that the church just grows in this year. So yeah, didn't want to start off on a dark note, but I did want to address that coming back. Today's episode is actually reflecting on 2024 with Noelle Fitchett, who is one of our other podcast co-hosts, for those of you that don't listen regularly or just don't know her. So we just decided to have a little girl chat because we have had a few conversations this year and realized that God did very similar things in our lives. And so I just wanted to have her on and talk about all the things that God taught her in 2024, things that she learned, things she's growing in, things that she wants to leave behind, but also bring into the new year. It's a really encouraging chat. I hope that you guys find it edifying and fruitful, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear it. Before we get into the episode, I do have to tell you about our amazing sponsors. You know them, you love them. I don't know why you haven't switched to them, and that is Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, and they put their cause ahead of their profits, meaning they care more about the values that they uphold and your money going towards those values rather than profiting off of you and putting your money towards things that you don't believe in. Patriot Mobile offers dependable nationwide coverage, giving you access to all three major networks, which means you get the same coverage you've been accustomed to, but your money goes to causes you support. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you support the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the sanctity of life, and our military, veterans, and first responder heroes. Their customer service team is 100% US based, and they make switching super easy. You can keep your phone, your upgrade, your number, and their team will help you find the best plan for your needs. All you have to do is go to patriotmobile.com/counteract or 972-PATRIOT. You can call that number. Once again, that is patriotmobile.com/counteract or call 972-PATRIOT. Get free activation when you use the code Counteract USA. Join us and make the switch today. You'd think after a million times of reading that ad, I would have it down by now, but hey man, new year, new me. We'll get better at it. Without further ado, let's get into this episode. I hope you guys enjoy and can't wait to see you next week. Bye! All right, so we are joined with none other than the Noelle Fitchett. She is one of the other hosts for our podcast. But Noelle, for the listeners who are here for the first time, can you give yourself a quick introduction? Tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Noelle. I'm from LA, fellow city girl as well. And I co-host a show for Counteract. It's rebranding, so now by the time this comes out, it'll be Tethered to Eternity. So talk about things from politics to pop culture, but all tethered with the hope of eternity, of how that relates to us as Christians and how we even respond to that. So that's been a joy. I love Counteract and like everyone from Counteract. It's such a blessing to be part of this ministry.
Yeah, we love Noelle. And I love your show. I love how culturally aware you are and how well you're able to speak about these things from a gospel perspective. And I've enjoyed every conversation that we've been able to have. So I was like, let's get Noelle on. And I know that you've had a pretty big year. You just posted your like 10 things you learned this year. And we've had other really cool conversations behind the scenes. So I just wanted to bring you on and have a little girl chat, and let's do some like reflecting, some goal setting, just give the listeners something encouraging to go into 2025 with. So yeah, I think to start, let's talk about praise. Like, do we have any praise reports? Are there any like cool things that God did in your life this year?
I think, one of the big things, honestly, looking back at the Counteract conference, like that was such a huge praise. And like even the conversation we were having in the car when we were like driving around at the last day, like that was so encouraging to my heart. Because I think sometimes like we think we're kind of like in a season alone and we're kind of just like isolated in the trials of life, but it's like we don't realize that someone across the country is going through something very similar. And like that was such a praise for me, and just like the friendships through Counteract of like Abigail and like my friend Jules in Texas, of just seeing like the Lord does put those people in our lives to like do life with us when it's messy. And that's been a huge praise of like seeing people stay in my life and pour into my life when it got messy, and seeing like, wow, like Lord, there are friends that are maybe just for a season, but they're those friends who are going to like walk through the mud with you. And like that's just been a huge praise. I'm so thankful for that. How about you?
Oh yeah. Same here. I think the Counteract conference this year was kind of a turning point for me.
Yeah.
I feel like this year I've been working in ministry and graduated college, and just so many like new horizons for me. But I went back to the Counteract conference. It was our second one, and I remember like reflecting on how far I'd come, how much my life had changed since the previous conference, and it was like crazy, like a drastic difference. And I feel like at that conference, like I things were really solidified for me, like what God is calling me into. And just, yeah, I feel like the Lord was like so gracious through things like our conversation in the car was also a big standout for me. And just getting to meet other young people, all the speakers, Grant, Jaden, even like getting to talk to people who are established in the movement, like I remember talking to Victor Marks was like the craziest experience for me. And I feel like the Lord used it all to really just solidify that this is like the trajectory that he has me on, and I don't have to be afraid of it. And yeah, that I'm not alone in the fight. Very same like experience, I think, to you, just knowing that there are young Christians around the country who are like fighting for these same biblical truths, and going through like personal hardships that are like just Gen Z things. I think I got into such a tunnel of like, I can't be dealing with this because I'm like working in pro-life, or I'm working in this higher ministry, but like at the same time I'm still struggling with like my friendship drama and whatever it is. And so hearing, like, getting to talk to you about those things was also a huge praise for me.
Yeah. No, that was like literally so much. I think this year it's so easy to like be critical and think, because I was also working in ministry this year, and like think, oh, how could I be struggling with like, I don't know, boy things or friendship things, or like, I should be past this. And it's like, wow, Lord, like that's just pride in itself of thinking that I'm beyond a certain struggle when like I'm not. And just like this morning, I was reading Proverbs, and I have like the tendency to just like beat myself up and just like really kind of just like sit in that failure and disappointment, and like and realizing like that's pride. And just reading Proverbs this morning of like the author, the first two verses, he's like, I'm so foolish, like I'm more foolish than all the humans that exist, basically. I've failed. But then like very quickly he turns that into like, but God like is the God who forms the heavens and the earth, the God who holds like all the waters in his hand and the stars in the sky. And it's like, Lord, it's so easy for me to like fixate on myself when like that robs me of joy, when I just from opposed to just reflecting on God and like who he is, and his faithfulness. Because like so many times like throughout the Bible, it's like we're made strong because of Christ. Like in our weakness, Christ is made strong. And so like that was a pretty consistent theme of my year too, of just realizing like I'm not above any struggle. And like, and I also don't have to like sit in that condemnation. Like the Lord's mercies are new every morning, and like he's not this God who's just like watching our every move, waiting to see when we mess up, but like he's just that forgiving father that wants us just to run, and when we trip he's going to help us up, and we just need to cling to him, you know, and like not seeing him as humans who are just very critical, but just as that like gracious father who's like so willing to forgive and just teach us and walk with us.
Yeah, that's so good. And interestingly enough, that's kind of been the similar lesson that I've had. I feel like a big part of my year was like, first of all, learning the theology of suffering. I think I had this false theology that like God as this like critical, like from the human perspective, this like critical leader who's basically like, yeah, go do that and like suck it up, you know, go die in the trenches. Like I think there was a spirit of condemnation over me that said like, I don't even deserve to be working in ministry. Like I deserve this suffering. Um, and God like really confronted me and was like, that's not my character. We have peace with God. Not only does he give us peace, we have peace between us and him. And yeah, that's been a really big like revelation on my end as well. Just
Yeah.
remembering that he really is like our loving father. He's our best friend. He's in the fight with us. And exactly what you said, like we don't have to stay in that condemnation, but like the battle is won. Like we're operating from a place of victory. And it's so easy to get into that pit of like condemnation and just feeling like I kind of felt like I was at war with God this year, being like, God, is this really your calling for me? Like, if this was your calling, I wouldn't be struggling in this way. But like, I almost like followed him. It was like obedience out of not resentment, but begrudging obedience. Like, okay, I do this because you're God, but I don't do this because I trust that it like you have my back.
Yeah.
Which was like, that sucks to even admit, but yeah, huge lesson for me to just remember that like we have peace with God. He's on our side. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. Like that literally like I think so many times I thought like sanctification and like growing in the Lord, like it's just gonna suck, and like I just need to suck it up because it's gonna be hard, and like but God is just and God is perfect, so I just need to like suck it up and accept it. But it's like I was literally like you were saying, that's not God's character. Like forgetting that like he works all things together for the good of those who love him. Like no good thing does he withhold from those who love him. Like he's a kind God. Like he wants my joy. He's not just like putting me through a situation just so I like grow in wisdom and become sanctified. Like, yes, those are parts of it, but it's because he knows it'll bring me the most joy. And like that has been giving me such a peace, because I think it's so easy for me to like go to people for reassurance of like, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? Like, am I, doing what God wants me to do, instead of just like going to the source and going to God of like, no, God, like, is this what you want me to do? And just depending on Christ for like that peace and assurance. Because like even this year, like there were so many times when I was also questioning my calling. I was like, God, why did you make me this way? Like, why do I have like, maybe there's something wrong with me, because I'm like, a lot of my friends are getting married, so I'm like, I'm not married. Like maybe this like place that you have me in isn't a calling. And just realizing like, no, like it's not what other people say, or even like other people's convictions or other people's way that they choose to live their life. Like, it just matters, like, what is God showing me personally, individually, and how do I like trust him in that, instead of just like looking to other people for reassurance instead of Christ. But that was like so hard to learn.
That's so real and so good. And also same. I feel like my friends are probably tired of me because like this has been a long season. My friends are so tired of me like complaining to them. And the Lord has really challenged me like in that same way of just like, well, are you depending on me? Like, am I enough for you? And I've been reading the Bonhoeffer biography by Eric Metaxas. And one of the biggest things I realized from just reading about his life and his ministry was like, and he's not even the first example of this. Like there are so many people in the Bible who do this exact same thing, which is being in the will of God, which oftentimes means it's a lonely journey. You're met with like tribulation, but it's like you said, the most joyful place that you can be, the safest place you can be. But sometimes it does mean like being on that kind of like lonely road, being isolated, feeling set apart, even within the church. Um, but just trusting that like God's righteousness in on that path is like still going to be the best option for you. Yeah, so that's so good.
I heard like the greater your impact for Christ often is like the greater your suffering and like the greater your like loneliness. And like I was started to read a book just about like spiritual depression by like Martin Lloyd. And I haven't finished it yet, but just like I'm just realizing like just because I'm going through a difficult season or maybe life is difficult, like that doesn't mean that I'm outside of God's will. Like if anything, it probably is a sign that I am. Like in Hebrews, he talks about he disciplines those he loves. Like he talks about the valleys, and like I remember there were so many times this year where like I'd be in a valley and then like get out and I'm like, oh, I kind of miss the valley. Like I kind of miss like that tenderness and like that brokenness and like that closeness that I felt to God in the valley. And so like I remember one day like after I had led worship that night and I was like, God, like I'm like bring me back to the valley. Like I don't know how you're gonna do that, but like bring me back to that. I want to feel like this closeness with you. And then like the most fastest turnaround rate for a prayer, like something else had happened, and then on a mountaintop after that, and then prayed that prayer again, and like something else had happened. But just like seeing like God, like I'd so much rather be in the valley and be like close to you and dependent on you than in this like prosperous state where I completely forget your faithfulness. And like that's just been such a hard lesson to learn, but like a comforting lesson as well of just like, Lord, like I just Jesus' life, like 30 years was just humiliation, working as a carpenter, like learning from people who were teaching him the very book he wrote, like just seeing Christ's life. It wasn't glamorous for majority of it. And just like, wow, Lord, like, why do I expect to have like a better life that's a walk in the park when like your life was not glamorous, you know? And so like, just trusting that like smooth sailing doesn't equate to being in God's like will or it being the perfect thing or being the right thing. Like life with Christ is bumpy, and like that's why he says take up your cross and follow me. Like it's not one that is just a walk in the park. But that's been extremely comforting but hard to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a bold prayer, very wise, but like I've definitely been in that place where it's like, okay, God, I'm going to pray this really scary prayer, and he answers it and I'm like, why did I do that? Like what? But it's always been so fruitful. So that's amazing to hear. Um can I ask, so I know that you kind of retired from Instagram. Your page was down for a bit. Can I ask why that was and what was happening during that time?
Yeah, so
Teaching you at least.
it was there's been so much that's happened in this year that I thought I knew the reason for that, and then turns out there's some other reasons. But kind of like in a nutshell, in the beginning of the year, I remember going to like a women's Bible study and someone talking about like the fear of man. And because I had like been involved in politics and like been pretty vocal online about like Jesus, I was like, fear of man, I don't really struggle in that department, which was so prideful. And then like probably a month later, I just was experiencing some like major fear of man where it was just like really bad social anxiety. I hadn't had panic attacks in like 3 years, and I like had probably like 3 of them this year. And it was just like severe fear of man. I still went to church, but it was just like I was so consumed with myself. And like at the root of that was just like a self-centeredness of thinking that everyone was thinking about me when no one was thinking about me. But it was to the point where I was like, I just need to like kind of just step away. And like, I think that I think like God is ultimately in control, and like there was wisdom in that, and God allowed me to step away for a season. But then like now reflecting, I think I let that fear paralyze me from serving the Lord. And like there was an absence of there was a learning in that, but there was also an absence of joy. And I realized it's because I wasn't walking in like the calling that God had for my life, because there is so much joy in that. And like there may be fear in doing like the thing that God's asking us to do, but there's like joy and peace and comfort in that. And like even today, being reminded, like I was reflecting on my notes from this year, and like in Proverbs 30, after he reminds himself of who God is, he makes a petition for God to guard him, to protect him. But then he also just continues writing the proverb, like continues writing about wisdom. And like that was just very convicting of like, I'm not supposed to stop when things get harder, even when we mess up or even when we fail. Like, yes, we take time to grieve, repent, and like ask the Lord to go before us, but we don't stop serving God just because we make a mistake or because things get harder, because like we're even struggling. Like we go to Christ for that strength, for that endurance. And so there was like a lot behind the scenes, friendships, like relationships, sanctification, and also just like also being treated not in a way that I should have allowed, but also learning through that. And like, and the Lord just bringing me to a point where like I was so low, where I had lost all of the things that I really, really cared about, to a point where I was like, okay, God, like I have to hold life with an open hand, because I've tried to grip so tightly, and it's only led to like more heartache. When like you're not a cruel God who's going to just take things or allow things because you want to hurt me. Like that's not what you're doing. You want my joy, you want my best interest. And so like really just opening my hand and like, Lord, you give and you take away, but like blessed be your name. And like now it's just like, wow, Lord, like that's produced such a peace, and like I'm not bitter, I'm not angry, and that's like only truly by the power of the Holy Spirit and nothing I ever could have done. And so yeah, I hope that wasn't too vague or too long-winded, but that's kind of what was going on in the background.
That's perfect and so wise, and also very relatable, because I think I've definitely been in the same boat of like not really wanting to like surrender some of the things that I kind of have to sacrifice. But then when I do, God is like, see how much lighter your load is, and see how much more joy is like in that thing now. So big lesson, very relatable. Um, so I wanted to kind of talk about, I know we've been like kind of reflecting on the past year. Um, is there anything you're like leaving behind in 2024?
Dude, so much. Like I think honestly, like I think people pleasing is like a huge thing, you know. I think so much of that fear stemmed from that, and just like really just honing in on like what is God showing me? And that doesn't mean like forsaking wisdom, and like there is wisdom in counselors, but like having that faithful few of people that I do go to, and not being afraid to like disagree with people of like, no, God is showing me this. I'm going to walk in confidence that this is what God is showing me, even if like someone who I admire disagrees with me. Like that's okay. And just like, yeah, really, really leaving behind like fearing people, and that's not something that happens overnight. Like that's something that God's going to continue like working out. But yeah, and I think like that, just like that self-reliance of that expectation of like I'm above certain sins or I'm above certain failures, like I'm not. And like I constantly need that dependency on Christ to get me through even what I think are smaller sins or smaller struggles of like friendships and stuff like that. It's like, no, the minute I think I'm above that, I'm going to make a huge mess. And I've seen that. And so just like, yeah, leaving fear of man and that self-reliance and constantly depending on Christ and hearing his still small voice instead of like the voices of people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's really good.
How about you? Like, what are some things that like you're leaving behind?
Well, um, I don't want to say same, but like kind of same. I've struggled with people pleasing for a long time. That's been something God has like been working on since I was saved because it was just like so bad on my end. And I feel like there's always new levels to it. But specifically when it comes to like obeying him, um, I'm leaving behind honestly any like independence that I feel. I've learned this year like how much I just want to do it myself, and like anything that threatens like any sort of autonomy that I have, I'm like not a fan of it. Um and that sounds crazy to say because I've like given my life to Christ. I've been walking with him for so long. I work in the pro-life movement. Like I know all the talk about, autonomy, and I know that like our lives belong to God. But when it comes to like following him on a deeper level, um I don't know, I feel like I sacrificed a lot of myself to him, but there were like still those things that I was holding back, specifically with like working in ministry. Um I've just like struggled. I felt like it's not a good fit for me. There's been a lot of things that I'm honestly still working through, but in the midst of all of it, I realized like how much I just wanted to fix it on my own and like solve things. Like I just want to like do it and like fix it instead of waiting on the Lord, um, and truly depending on Him. It's just been a whole new level of like depending on Him, and waiting. Like the word has really been waiting for me. So, yeah, I'm leaving behind I guess also the self-reliance of trying to fix things on my own or feeling like, because that's also led to pride for me. I've, been like, well, I know that my way is best. Like, why is this person not doing this thing? Because like I know exactly what needs to happen. But at the same time, like I don't know what God is doing behind the scenes in those people's hearts, or in, like if we're talking about ministry, like I'm just a lowly little, post grad new recruit. And like there's all these conversations happening with the board and the executive directors that I'll never know about. I can never know what's happening in their lives and their place in the ministry. Um, so yeah, I don't know, just like having to take a step back and not be so impulsive and not let my activist self come out too much, and really just trust the Lord and like trust that I'm a part of something much bigger than just me, and that he's really pulling all these strings. He's very sovereign over things that I'll never even understand in this lifetime. So
Yeah.
that was really
Oof.
long-winded, but
Dude, no, I relate to that so much. Like it's hard working in ministry, and I think it's hard being a young person in ministry. And like that is something that I've definitely had to trust the Lord with, of just like, okay, God, you see and hear things that I don't. And like I just need to trust you're gonna take care of it, because right now this does not make sense.
right.
Just remembering his character. Like, okay, God, you're a good father. You're going to protect your daughters. You're going to do what you want to do, and you're sovereign, and like, you're going to work it all out. And that's, yeah, just like letting that go. I so relate to that.
Yeah, that's real. Sorry, I lost my notes. Oh yeah, so I guess we've already talked a bit about like things the Lord has taught you. Um, but on the same topic of leaving things behind, what are you bringing into the new year?
Oof. I think like the first thought that like popped into my mind of like bringing into the new year, um, I have found two women in my life who have just like, so I don't want to say perfect because no one's perfect, but like so beautifully balanced empathy, and also speaking truth when it's hard, and correcting me, but like being so empathetic and like truly embodying what it means to like be a follower of Christ. And like this year I experienced a lot of hurt, but I've also experienced love in a way that I've never really like seen from like Christians, and like, and just in a different way. Like I've seen Christians be so loving, but just their like willingness to be like down on the ground, and like in the dumps with me, and like, so I've definitely taking like those people into next year and like holding it with an open hand should the Lord like choose to take those people out. But I'm just so thankful for those two women. Their names are like Cindy and Courtney, and I'm just like so thankful for their friendship and also like mentorship. And so would love to bring them into next year.
It's so beautiful when like the Lord places people in specific seasons. Like I've kind of learned, I guess also this year, that's something that's like happened with me, is learning like what missional friendships look like. Because there's like the acquaintances, there's the people you have fun with, like the general friends, and then there's those women or just like members of the church who are like ready to get on their knees and like get their hands dirty with you, and all for the sake of the kingdom. Like you're both like pursuing the Lord together on like this same kind of mission, and I've just found that so beautiful. So that's like amazing that you've gotten to like have those people in your life. And I will definitely be praying that you can like just continue to grow in deeper friendship with them, because
Thank
it's
you.
such a like life-changing thing, honestly. I feel like
Yeah.
it changed the way that I see friendship now, I think.
Yeah, totally. I like totally agree with you. I think like it's not until we go through like those hard seasons, like the season you've been going through, like the season that I've been going through. Hopefully, it's coming to a close, but like, um, for both of us, but like in the best way. But anyways, like just those like seeing in those seasons, like who are those friends who are going to like walk through those hard seasons with us. And like you were saying, I love how you said like there are those friends that like we hang out with and we do fun things with, and like I'm realizing like it's okay to like be okay with that. Like not every friend is that friend for the hard like those hard things. Like you can have your friends that you just have fun with, and like that's okay. And like categorizing those friendships, and like I think that's been good for my heart too, of like not expecting anything from like people, but rather like, okay, Lord, just help me love people and not need them but love them. Um and that's been so good. And so thankful for all the counteract people too. Like it's so nice to like see other Gen Z people who love Jesus, and it's like, okay, like we have the same passion, the same fire. Like that's just been so thankful for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Something about having like those people to share the arrows with, as Ellie Bestook you would say.
Yes.
Yeah, have the same passion and the same like I'll never forget our conversations backstage at the conference where someone would just throw out the craziest like I remember Jaden Hurd was like, so do we abolish abortion? And it like was a conversation the whole weekend because we all were just so eager to like talk about this and get to the root of the issue, and like just having that passion with like people my age, I completely agree, has been amazing to see.
It's rare. Like it's common, but it's also rare. Like I feel like we're just all really spread out and we all feel isolated within our own spheres. And then when we get to come together, it's like, whoa, like you love Jesus too. You're like passionate and doing something about it and like active about like the Lord. It's like so cool. So cool.
Yeah, so good. And for the listener, if you need any other reason to come to next year's conference, this is that reason. You're going to meet so many amazing people. And truly just like deeper friendships. So that's amazing. Um,
Yeah.
so full transparency, my computer might die soon, but I wanted to quiz you a little bit on if you think there's like everyone's doing their, ins and outs for the new year on trends, on political stuff, all kinds of things. I wanted to know what Noelle's ins and outs for 2025 are.
Ooh. I've seen so many like on Instagram and stuff that I'm like, man, I don't know. Some of these are spicy. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm like, I feel like politically, like I think one thing that is like definitely in is like I've seen a lot of bridge building from both like the right and the left. I've seen like a lot less at each other's throats and like we agree with stuff. Um and so I'm hoping that that's a good like an accurate prediction. So I'm hoping like what's out is canceling and doxing each other and what's in is like having a conversation. That'd be so nice. Um and I think I don't know, I've also seen like a trend of just like when it comes to pop culture of um of just like people actually, when I say like pop culture of just the way we engage, like TikTok and like everything, I think people are like really searching for like deeper meaning. And I think a lot of people are really curious about God. And so I'm hoping that like God isn't in next year as well.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm glitching out a bit. No, those are great predictions. And I think like they're pretty accurate, I would say. I mean, in
Hopefully.
foresight.
That'd be so
Yeah,
nice.
we'll see. I know. I'm kind of in the same boat though. Like I've been watching a lot of just I went down this YouTube rabbit hole of like how to grow your YouTube or your TikTok to like this many followers in 2025, and like a lot of people are actually predicting very similar things. They're saying, you know, we don't want like the caricature of something. We don't want someone who's in a box. Like we want a nuanced, relatable person on our feed. And I think that that very well could translate, hopefully will translate into like just our daily lives, and the conversations that we have. And also I think I'm hoping, I'm praying that when Trump comes into office, a lot of people will see like, oh, he's not this crazy, terrible fascist dictator that we were told. And I'm hoping that'll kind of ease people. And then on the right, I feel like I've kind of sat back and I'm like, well, like the fight's not over, but like, oh, we accomplished this thing. Like, now what do we do? And it's kind of going to happen on that more like relational level of people's hearts and minds. Have I been cutting out this whole time? Because okay,
No?
cool. I'm just
Yeah.
freezing up because I'm on low battery. But yeah, so I think those are like really fair predictions. And I'm hoping the same, honestly.
Yeah. I feel like I was also down that rabbit hole too. And like, I've noticed like authenticity is like a huge thing of people just wanting people to be real. And I'm so excited for that because I feel like it will expose a lot of people who aren't genuine at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I'm thankful for that because I love like deep, authentic, raw conversations. And I'm so excited to see that like more people want that too.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yay. Well, anything else you want to leave for the listeners going into 2025?
I would just say like hold everything with an open hand. It's so much easier when God does things when you're just like all game for it than when you're trying to fight against it. So yeah, that would just be my encouragement to like the listeners.
Yay. And I second that. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Can't wait to see what the Lord does in your life, in your content, and all the things that you're going to get into this year. I know you have some big stuff coming up. I don't know if you want to share about any of it, but
I'll be on a Jubilee video in January, so super stoked for that and some other stuff too. But I'll wait to share that. But thanks so much for having me on. I'm so excited to see it.
Of course.
So I'm so excited to see like everything the Lord like does through your life too, and I love your account, dude. Big fan. Always excited to see how the Lord's using your life. So very excited.
I'm such a Noelle fan, and I feel like we relate on a lot just being in super liberal cities. Like I have my woke coffee right now. Completely
Love
agree
it.
with your opinion about woke coffee being the best. So yeah,
so see, you just need to come to LA, and then we need to do some content stuff, and then get coffee.
absolutely. I'll be out there 2025. We'll make it happen.
I love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay. See you guys.